Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I want to welcome you to this virtual event. I am so stoked to welcome R. Eric Thomas and Julian Winters. Eric Thomas presenting Kings of Baltimore. Such a righteous book, so much fun to read. But first, I do want to thank the other bookstores that we are putting this on in partnership with. Little Shop of Stories in Atlanta, Georgia, A Likely Story in Sykesville, Maryland, and Politics and Prose in Washington, D.C. Uh, those, along with Book Passage, we could not be in better company, keeping independent book sales alive and bringing you great content like this. R. Eric Thomas is an author, playwright, television writer. He is the author of Here for It, or How to Save Your Soul in America. He is also the author of a biography of Representative Maxine Waters, Reclaiming Her Time. He, on television, has written for Apple Plus's Dickinson and FX's Better Things, personal favorite. And he is the long-running host of The Moth in Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia, both. All of these fantastic things. He is joined by Julian Winters, who is the best-selling and award-winning author of contemporary young adult fiction. His novels Running with the Lions, How to Be Remy Cameron, and The Summer of Everything have received numerous accolades. You should definitely read them if you haven't. He's a former management trainer, and he currently lives in Atlanta. I love this book. If you are a young adult reader, you are in the right place. If you're not a young adult, it is well worth reading as well. It is a wonderfully riotous story of friendship and the brimming kind of anticipation of adulthood. And I think it strikes you at whatever age you are at, that the importance of sharing our lives with others and the places and adventures that can bring us to. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to R. Eric Thomas and Julian Winters.
Hey, thank you, Avram.
Thank you.
Julian, I'm so excited to be in conversation with you.
Um, to say I'm excited, I feel like I've been using excited a lot. I feel like I'm like watering down what I'm really feeling about being able to talk to you. I don't know if anyone's followed me on any social media platform, but you had to have seen me scream about this book 8 million times because I love it so much. I'm so happy that now we have it in paperback form also. Because that's always such a great thing. I get so many young readers who just get so excited about the paperback version of a book, and you're like, yes, I can grab this and I can get this. And so I'm just so happy to be here today with you.
Well, thank you. And I'm just like, I'm truly honored. Like, I'm a huge fan of yours, and I feel like I get starstruck. I'm just like, oh, I'm just wading into these waters, trying to, putting out this little book, and like to have people whose work I admire, people who created worlds that I want to live in, say that they also enjoyed this world. That means so much. And yeah, and I don't know. It is really exciting to be at this phase with Kings of Be More, where you have the hardcover and then you have the paperback, because it feels even more real. And it definitely, I remember, I think most of the books that I bought when I was in high school, and even back to middle school, were paperback covers. One, because I was like, I don't have any money. This costs less. And two, because you can throw it in a bag and keep it popping, and or pack six of them in on vacation where you're supposed to be doing outside activities, and no one will know. You're like, oh no, my suitcase is just heavier from all the outdoor wear that I have prepared to wear. I'm very excited.
Exactly. Very excited to be in nature right now. Can't
Oh,
wait. But
cannot
also,
wait. Where are the bears? I cannot wait to hike with them.
but yes, I mean, this book. Where are the not my jam. Sorry. I'm sorry, nature lovers. This one's not for you. But no, this book is so amazing. It's incredible. I remember when the cover first popped up, and I think I really embarrassed myself going all out about it and whatnot. And now having, it's been probably like 2 years since I read, because I read it before, the book even came out.
Yeah.
And this book has still stuck with me. I still bring it up. People are like, "What's the best thing you've read lately?" And I'm just like, "It's Kings of People." I just
Oh my
cannot
God.
top how much I feel about this book from an author level, from a reader level, from a personal level,
Yeah.
and how much it would have meant to me to have this when I was a teen, and how happy I am a teen to have it now. But before I jump ahead of myself, for those who have not read the book yet, and no, I'm not judging you, but secretly, if you haven't, I'm judging you. Can you just tell us a little bit about what Kings of More is about?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Kings of More is it's a contemporary story set in present day, or a little bit, next year, Baltimore, about two Black queer best friends facing down their last day together. One of them, Harrison, is more of a wallflower. Linus is more outgoing. And Linus, his father needs to move them out of state, and Harrison fears, because of various factors in Linus's life, that their friendship will dissolve with the distance, despite the prevalence of Zoom and texting and all the other things that you can communicate with each other. There's something magical about proximity, and so Harrison tries to recreate or create a long-lasting magic between them by taking Linus on, or kidnapping Linus on, a day-long adventure throughout Baltimore, doing all the things that scared them, so that in conquering their fears and having an adventure, they cement their friendship. It's based on Ferris Bueller, what's inspired by, I should say, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. But because these are two Black queer kids in contemporary Baltimore, the circumstances are wildly different. The things that they're able to do and the things that they are interested in seeing and doing are very different. It is a platonic love story, and so I felt very strongly that that was a space that was available in the landscape of young adult literature, and it was really important to me. I think the first time that we fall in love in life, or we learn about falling in love in life, it is platonically, it is with a friend. um, and I think that, and studies have shown, not to put on my science hats, but studies have shown that when young people, particularly young men, but young people in general, form lasting friendships in youth, they turn out to be happier and more well adjusted throughout their lives. And people who have not done such things do find themselves at a disadvantage throughout adulthood. So it is important, and in fact, I would say it behooves all of us to cultivate and nurture friendships at any age, and for young people to see that modeled, so that they too can find that lifelong platonic love, and indeed the love inside of themselves.
Oh God.
I'm back. Who was that? That was a scientist came on the show.
I was prepared to cry on this Zoom, but for totally different reasons.
And I wish I feel like Ryan LaSalla. I'm like, do I have a bunch of costumes I can put on? I now just occurred to me.
I love it. Listen, every question, I want a new personality pop out. So this book, you mentioned Ferris Bueller's Day Off, but this book very much is, it does capture that quintessential teen film feel to it, which I appreciated so loved so much as someone who grew up so heavily, not necessarily reading books because it was hard to find characters I identified with because they weren't Black and they weren't
Yeah,
queer,
yeah,
but I could identify so well with teen movies. So to have books like this that really, tap into the beauty of that and showing how cinematic books can be, I adore it so much. Can you tell me a bit about the inspiration that came from you deciding, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write this young adult novel about two queer Black boys going on these madcap adventures on their last day together?
yeah. I was very interested in that sort of genre, in the teen movie feel, the John Hughes feel, but also book smart. Right? Oh God, that movie is so good.
Mm.
Can't I? I grew up on. I'm a little bit older than so I like watched Booksmart as an adult, but when I was like a teen, it was like Empire Records. It was Can't Hardly Wait, Bring It On, and there is just something about uh, eh, that energy that sometimes exists in YA novels, and I found myself hungry for it. And sorry, I'm a little sniffly. And I also felt I had I had a friendship in high school that was not quite like this, but it was the first time that I fell in love platonically with a young woman named Electra, and I wrote about it in my first book and Here for It, and an editor reached out to me and was like, "Would you I think it's important for young people to hear about this. Would you want to expand on it?" And I loved that question, and I loved that as a prompt, but I also realized, for various other reasons, I didn't I didn't feel right, sort of writing a nonfiction, writing a memoir, sort of about our friendship. And so, what I said, I would write a book that would honor that friendship. And um, we worked together in the school library all summer long, and that's sort of where our friendship bloomed and grew. And we went up and down the stacks, like scanning and refiling, putting things in order. And as we did, we like talked about everything in life. We talked about, school and future plans and fears and grief and the big things and the small things. It was incredibly intimate and beautiful friendship. But then we would also, do like silly stuff. We would go to the mall, and she was obsessed with Madonna. And so we'd go to the record store, Sam Goody, woo woo, for malls. And she'd like stare at this poster Madonna. And it was right before Madonna's cowboy era, and she was like, she just no, it was right after the cowboy era. And she was like, Madonna discovered Kabbalah, and it's going to change everything for everyone. And I was like, I don't know what these words mean, but I'm obsessed. And so just like I wanted to write a book about that level of just like adoration and obsession, and the way that another person's love of life can change your life and open your life up. And I also wanted to write a love letter to Baltimore, a city that I have a very complicated relationship with, but a city that I'm from, I grew up in, and I was living in again when I wrote the book. And it was also it's important to me to write a book that spoke to a real experience of Baltimore that wasn't tinged by some of the negative messaging that you hear about the city, and also wasn't stereotypical in the way that maybe some other things are. And so you're not going to see, they don't get, there's snowballs are big in Baltimore, and lemons with peppermint sticks, and there's ice cream truck, all these other things, and like those are, but those aren't the only thing that exists in a sort of Baltimore summer. And so I was like, I wanted to create a specific, idiosyncratic, vivid picture of a city that is real, that I live in, that I sort of know. Um, and place two Black kids in it where their trauma wasn't the reason that they were in the middle of the story, where they got to be free and full, and the problems they face are human problems, not problems based on their identity. Because I hungered for that. I still hunger for that. And this is something, and I saw in your books, and in books by other writers, who are whose work I really, are is sort of, I think, paving a new way. Leah Johnson sort of comes to mind, and a lot of other people, but I think of you two first, um, where you're writing three-dimensional humans who are also fully like dropped into their identities. And I learned a lot from that, and I was like, that is the thing that I missed. Um, so yeah, I just wrote it to be like you. I did it to be like you.
Lie, lie,
That's
and
the name.
fabrication. I'm not hearing it. Yeah, you, you So great the way you talked about it. But I definitely felt like, so there's two main characters, there's Linus and Harrison, but there is definitely a third main character that you brought to life for me, which was the city of Baltimore.
Mm,
It is such a living, breathing thing. As someone who has probably spent maybe an hour or two in Baltimore in his
mm,
whole life, I felt like I was there. I felt like I was learning and knowing so much about what it meant to be there. You showed, the real sides, but you also showed how really beautiful Baltimore could be. You definitely made it this complex, layered piece of the story that meant so much. I mean, we open the book, and there's these two black boys in there at the cemetery, and I'm just like,
mhm.
what is going on here? I'm loving it. I'm sold. Take me there. And I appreciate that so much because oftentimes it feels like with books we're not transported fully, and I felt like with this book I was so fully transported. I was so like, this is such a beautiful journey. Um, and this book is very much about, you talk about platonic love and friendship, and it is so much about the beauty of that,
Mm,
and how it can inform so much of who we become later on in life, is having those friendships and building those connections and those small moments that everyone likes to skip over and magnifying them, which you do so wonderfully with this. But what really meant the most for me is this is a book about two queer black best friends, two queer black boys, and their friendship. It was not about romance. It was not about anything else. It was just about them holding on to this moment because they're already on two different journeys, even though they're in the same city.
yeah.
But this just magnified it even more and made it even more special. Can you talk about wanting to really dive into that? Because you talked about, not wanting to rewrite your own history, but what it meant to write two queer black boys experiencing the power of friendship.
Mm. Yeah, I did not have this experience at all. I wasn't out, really most even really to myself at that age, at the age of 16, which is what they are. I think I had sort of dawning awareness, but I lived in a very different universe. I lived in a different world. Um but I see this level uh of freedom in 16-year-olds that I know. And I also feel this level of freedom in myself. And so, it is like this is a version of the world that we can live in, that we do, that some of us do live in. And I think that I am always interested, I'm always going to be here for continuing to remind in friendly but forceful ways, the larger world, that like black queerness is also a very varied and vivid and experience, and where there are a multitude of kinds of ways of being, and um and because we just see fewer, obviously you see fewer queer stories, and then within that you see fewer stories about people of color. And I'm always hungry for more, because the more versions of these stories that we get, the more we're reminded that none of us are monoliths. No identity is a monolith. No city is a monolith. I'm not writing the definitive story of Baltimore, and I'm not writing a definitive story of queerness, and I'm not writing a story of blackness. But what I am trying to write into the universe of everybody who reads this is that all these things are absolutely possible, that these kids are out there, that even if you aren't like them, that there is some commonality. I learned, I started off as doing live storytelling shows, like The Moth, and I still do. I've hosted the Moth in here in Philly for 10 years now, or nine years. And what I learned, and I say this a lot, but it's true, it's like it's sort of, I should just have it tattooed on me, is that like stories are empathy engines, and that they,
Mhm.
when you tell the truth about yourself, or you tell a story, it creates this bridge between yourself and the listener, and it creates an openness in them, that so they can think more about their own world, and learn more about themselves. And so when we have more stories of queer black lives and queer black youth, um, it makes all of our lives bigger. It makes all of our lives um, more vivid. And that was also one of the reasons that we step away from their story in Kings of More, and we get these this other narrative with Aperna, with the two Apernas, because I also wanted to say, like, even in this story of the specificity, it is made richer by this experience with these two Desi girls, and their caper that they're going on, and uh, I don't feel I am not complete unless my life is full and varied and full of people sharing parts of themselves, and so that was, it's a friend of mine pointed out to me, people are always like, which one are you, Harrison or Linus? And I'm like, well, I gave them little bits of both of me, but I'm neither of those characters. Unfortunately, I wish I could be, but I'm not cool. But there, and there's a
Lie.
teacher. No, I'm absolutely not cool. Unfortunately, studies show, after much research, I'm not, as they say, cool. And there's various older male, black male figures. There's a teacher and parents, and like all these people that I'm like, oh, I would love to be this person. But a friend of mine pointed out to me, the person that you're most like in this book is Harrison's 80-year-old grandfather. And I absolutely, that is who I am. That is exactly who I am. But I love that because it's a we I want to write to continuum. I want to write to the idea that Black queer people exist from birth to death. That we're not an idea that just came out, um, and we're not going anywhere. And so, to the best of my ability in this book, I try to write to that. And you see, at least three generations of Black queerness. Um, in this book, and you'll see many generations of Black queerness in future books. I'm unstoppable. They're trying to stop me. They're at the door. They're like, you gotta stop writing multi-generational. And I said, I won't. I won't do it. Can't. Won't.
I hope that you never ever stop, because it is so needed, to have that, to not only just see the now and the present, or to look towards the future, but to understand that we've thrived in the past as well, to know that,
Yeah.
this is not a fad or anything. This is not like, ooh, Black queerness, that's a new thing, I wonder how
Right.
long that's going to last. No, no, it's been going on forever and ever and ever, and it will not stop. And I love that about this book, is showing that it is a continuous thing. And yeah, we're here to take over. But so we talked about friendship. I want to talk about these two characters as individuals, though, because
Yeah.
you told us at the beginning, yes, they are two very different. Harrison is this wallflower, this almost like, you're just like, come on, Harrison, just take that last step. You're almost there, do it. And Linus is the probably the most chillest person I've ever known, and I
So
love
cool.
that. Um, but I also love the way that you kind of show that they are similar, in that, in those opposite things, they actually carry those things inside of them, where Harrison is one who comes up with all these wild hijinks and all these adventures for them to go on, and it just keeps on pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, while Linus is very much almost shy to the idea of going on, and facing fears and whatnot. So can you talk about crafting these two very different characters who do carry these very similar traits inside of them, and how important it was to kind of show that to readers. Like I said, we're not a monolith, but at the same time, once we are put into those situations where we have to kind of face our fears, we see how much we are like the people that truly love us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I one of the interesting challenges of creating this dynamic was building characters who ultimately are meant for each other, are meant to sort of like link up, but also would act as good antagonists to each other. And so they had to have traits that, when pushed to one extreme, uh, activate some fear in the other character, some weakness, and because that keeps the momentum of the book going. And so, I think I started off with Harrison, and I was like, okay, well, this is sort of Harrison's journey, and what does he need? He needs to come into his own. He needs to act with boldness, and he needs to sort of overcome this anxiety that is kind of plaguing him. But and so but I also was interested in create and so I was like, great, that's the baseline. What's the whatever? I don't treble. I don't know music. Who can say? Um, and so I was like, great. Well, if he's I also one of the things I love about writing teen characters is that you don't want to write wink to the reader one day they're going to figure it out, but you do get to write potential into them. And so it's like he is this theater kid who would rather he's a wallflower in the theater, but he has this love of theater and he thinks in musicals. And so it's like, what is the future look like for him? Does he come into his own to the point where he is center stage? I don't know. Maybe, probably not. Maybe he finds a different way. But inside of him there's already this conflict where he's like, don't look at me, I'm very anxious, but also I am drawn to the drama. And so if he's drawn to the drama, then I was like, oh great, then I got to create this cool as a cucumber, skinny as a string bean, thrift store wearing history buff, like somebody who is like the Bert to his Ernie, like somebody who is just sort of tonally very different.
Mhm.
um and for whom the drama is only going to create anxiety for him. He has managed his internal struggle by sort of shutting down. And obviously his journey in the book is like you gotta step into it. You gotta look it in the face. And because of the way his parents are divorced, and there's some miscommunication that he has with his mother about their relationship. And so he has this, not to sound like Jamie Lee Curtis on the press tour for Halloween, but he has this trauma. And it is gnawing away at him, and he has to work through it. And so so I've got these two characters on these sort of separate arcs, and the place where they sort of keep converging is public, public personal, like what's outside, what's only in here. And then we start off with them in this very intimate sort of moment, this sort of they're in the emotionally intimate. They're in the cemetery, all high above the city, and you get to see that despite all the other noise around them, despite all the things that are happening inside and outside, they see each other. They really see each other. They see through all the noise. There's a part where Linus, later on in the book, where Linus talks about seeing Harrison on stage in a play and how he just sort of bloomed, and Harrison talks, a little bit about that moment, not in the same way, but talks about how Linus showed up and went to the cast party afterwards and read a Wikipedia article on on the history of the play, um, because he didn't need all the drama. He just wanted to be with his friend. So I don't know. I feel like I was like, what am I talking about? I'm just I'm so deeply, I'm still in this friendship that I'm just like, oh yeah, it's this and it's this. But I knew, I have some friendships where one of my best friends, we call each other two Miss Piggies because we're both Miss Piggy. And but we are Miss Piggy in different ways. And then you have other friendships where one person's the Ernie, one person's a Bert. All friendship models are based on the Muppets. If it's not a Muppet friendship, I don't think it's real, unfortunately. I'm sorry. But if you can, who's the Rolf? That's a question you have to ask yourself.
Always ask. Yes. I never have to ask myself who's the animal though. It's like always right
Oh yeah,
there
you
for
could,
you. Oh,
you know
I
who the animal is.
so you've also crafted this unbelievable cast of characters. surrounding Linus and Harrison, I could not get enough of. And one of my favorite things about it is the juxtaposition between the family dynamics,
Mm.
because you have Linus and his father, and boy, oh boy, have I been in that situation where it's like, don't you go 2 feet without me not knowing where you
Oh
are.
yeah.
And then you have, but at the end of the day, still understood so deeply why it is that way, why, his father's holding on so tightly to him. And then on the other side, Harrison and his family, and I could not get enough.
Yeah.
Especially could not get enough of him and his sister Corinne. It was such an amazing sibling relationship that brought so much flavor, so much warmth, and also so much like of a reality check. Like, Harrison, wake up! This is what I need you to to understand about life. It was so beautiful and such importance. So can you talk about this cast of characters and the friends also that just pop up everywhere? What was like building that out into this journey, and how much fun you had with that? Because I could tell you were living your best life when writing scenes with them. And
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I am to maybe to my benefit or detriment, who can say, I'm a side character queen. I love a big cast. I love, I grew up on the Muppets, so I'm just like, give me all the zany at the periphery. And so I knew that I wanted Harrison and Linus to have this vivid, deeply, weird, wonderful Baltimore world, um, that also brought out all these different flavors. And so yeah, like Corinne was one of my favorite characters to write. Corinne is Harrison's older sister who's come back from college under sort of strange circumstances, and they have like a sort of tetchy, um, slightly acrimonious relationship, but there's love there. And I one of my favorite, I don't have a sister, but one of my favorite things to write, and I've written a couple plays with this dynamic. And obviously this book, I'm really trying not to write it in this novel I'm working on right now, but I'm like, she keeps popping up. But I love this, I love a black brother sister relationship in various iterations and formations. One, because I think I have had that with friends, and I think there's so much to sort of mine. And two, because I just love Corinne. I love that she is finding herself, and that it's not her story, and I didn't feel that it was my place to tell her story. Um, but she is so deeply important to Harrison, even as he's like, this woman gets on my nerves. It's also very important for me that both of the boys had parents who it was clear and it was never in doubt to the reader or to them that they were loved unconditionally, and that their queerness was never a stumbling block for their parents. Their parents are in their late 40s, early 50s. These people live in our times, and they didn't even have to sort of go through like, oh, I got to get used to it. They this is not a question. And so like, but they still have conflicts. They're like, you're overprotective, you're overbearing, you're this, you're that. Um, and so writing these adults who are trying to negotiate freedom and protection for these black kids, um, felt really fruitful for me. And also just sort of knowing that these adults have other things going on in their lives, which I think the reader knows, but it's not, we don't need to know, but it affects the action of the book. Linus's father's financial situation, Linus's mother's um, work situation, and the marriage that they had, Harrison's parents, and their friendships and their abilities to sort of have relationships. All of it matters. And then Linus has these two friends, well, three friends, who pop up from his school. There's Maz, who Linus has a crush on, but Linus doesn't want to admit it. And Fab and Phil, who are sort of a duo. Fab is a the Fab is just everything. Like Fab is tall. Like I'm obsessed with Fab. She's tall. She's a fangirl. She's like maybe like overly fanning on this dance troupe. They're like it's unclear whether they want her to keep creating these fan videos, fan cams. She's like she writes fan fiction. Like she's just like she's a fan. And Phil is like a little Asian Annie Leibovitz. Like she is just she is she's sharp and to the point. Um and um and they just sort of showed up in the text like fully formed, and I was like, oh hi, oh my gosh, I needed this. I needed these people to be deterrents to the plan, but I also needed them to give just more flavor to this book. I love side characters. I love a rich world. I get so well, I don't what's a positive way of putting this? I love a world that I can feel fully, that I feel like, oh, no matter what name pops up in the next paragraph, I'm excited. I want to like, and when they go away, I'm like, ah, tell me more. Um, Harrison has this group of friends, the phalanx of sad boys, who you don't even really see. But for whatever reason, my editor Joanna let me, and thank goodness, I love Joanna. She let me like go into like page-long detail about each one of these boys and his like troop that you don't see. But I was like, you gotta know, he's got all these weird guys at school that he's friends with, a bunch of weirdos. Ah, I love it. I love it. I want a whole. I just want every page to be full of weirdos.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That's it.
Love it, love it, love it. I want to live in this weird world because I feel like I'd fit in perfectly. Um, there are this book is hilarious. I, as an author, I tried to study how to write the humor that you wrote into this book. Failed miserably, but that's okay. I'm
No,
going to
stop.
get there. But what I really truly love about this book is there are moments that are so beautiful and so impactful. I literally had to stop reading and walk away for a while because it's like it's like it's that moment when you see something in a movie or you read something and you feel the healing start to
Mm,
happen for yourself. And I was like, I gotta sit with this for a while. And those moments, I'm not gonna spoil anything just in case anyone hasn't read yet, but there's a moment at the pool with
mm,
Harrison.
yeah.
Hit me and like I it was that good else.
Oh, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Julian. I can't hear you for some reason. Give me one. Can you try again? Sorry. I like
Yeah.
lost. There we go. Gotcha. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. No. Great. You have this way of weaving in these beautiful moments for these two black boys, which meant so much because you show how beautiful black boyhood can be, and that despite the harsh realities that these two are facing, you also show how wonderful queer joy can be also. Can you talk about weaving in those moments and showing the reader, I think you talked a little bit about this before, but the kind of existence that we can have if we just allow people to be who they are and experience how wonderful um, the journey of life can be.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. I do love that moment in the pool. I was writing to that moment
Oh,
like a long time, and I was just like, we're gonna like, is this am I gonna be able to like pull this off? It was really important to me that Harrison has this relationship with his body that is um I think on its way to being sacred, and but it's not there yet. And I I don't I hesitate to even sort of talk more about it because I was like the exact words that I feel like I don't want to. I've lived this journey with a body. We all have bodies, and I've lived this sort of journey toward like
mhm.
how do I appreciate this body that I'm in? And there, as a teenager, it's very tough. I think for many teenagers, as a Black person, you're also relating to your body in a different way. And then as a queer person, your body, like, there you get messages about what your body is supposed to do and supposed to mean. So I hesitate to even put more words into it because I was just like, I want the words to be so respectful of his space, his process, and what
Mhm.
needs to happen. Um, I'll tell you this much. So when I wrote that, and I'm sorry, I want to answer your question in a second, but when I wrote, I took swimming lessons when I was a young kid. But I didn't really like I couldn't really swim. And so I wrote that, that section sort of like with the sort of memory of what swimming is, and my husband is a swimmer, and we sort of talked and this and that. And I was like, well, it's like I wrote in sort of the sort of it's not like he's an Olympian. But I like reading that, and reading like on book tour stops and whatnot. It really inspired me, and then for the last 6 months or 9 months, I've been taking swimming lessons every week. And every week I think of Harrison and Phil at the pool, and the reason that I am trying to create a new relationship between myself and buoyancy, and myself and my body, is because of these characters. So these characters worked on me. Um, and I just, that's for me the power of books. I'm like, you can write books that also do work for yourself, that do work on you. And I think, I think to sort of the question about like the larger, um, the sitting comfortably of the pain and the joy. I get that from theater. Playwright first, and one of the things that I love to hold is this idea that laughter is a dilator, that you sort of open up emotionally when you laugh, and then anything can sneak in. And I love sitting around the table at family gatherings, and we're telling stories, and we're laughing so hard that we're crying, and then we're crying, and then we're laughing again. It is that openness. It is the way that life sneaks in. Um, like from the line from Waitress, sometimes life just sneaks in through the back door. Um, and it is, um, I knew that these people in this book, and to a person, every single person in this book is working through something hard because they are human, and we are all working through something hard. And they are mostly people of color, and they're largely queer people, and they are not defined by their otherness. This is everyone shows up in the center of their own story, but that story, they still have to go through something. And so I knew that there was room in this book for everyone to sort of get to this place of saying, I'm going to work through the thing that I need to work through because I am in a safe space with my community. And you see that. You get that with Corinne, you get that with Linus, you get that with Harrison, you get that even with Aparna. Um, and I love that. I love that when you are with people who are um, your people, that you can do anything, and so that laughter can turn into tears and turn into healing and turn into a new relationship with yourself and with the world. That is, I feel like for me, that's the message. I don't know. I don't think there's a message of the book, but I think that there is an opportunity of the book, which is that friendship creates um, a fuller world and a fuller experience. And when you open yourself up to love another person, you're also opening yourself up to loving yourself in a more deep and meaningful way. Um, and I find that to be extraordinary, that life has this possibility for us, just by being open to other people. Ugh, I love it.
Love it too. I love this book so much for that, ability to see these things that we often feel like it's like hidden from us, but actually it's like it's right there. If we just open ourselves to it, like you said, if we just, interact in these and really like fully invest ourselves into these experiences, and these moments with people that like, truly love us, like our community, and whatnot, it can unlock so many things. I want to be respectful of, just in case there's audience questions. But I do have, I'm gonna like cram my last two questions
Yeah,
together, okay?
I'll be quick. I'll be
Because
quick.
this is, you talked about this. You're a playwright. No, you're fine. You're fine. You're fine. You are a playwright first. You've done so many amazing things, and this was your first young adult novel. So the question is more to, what were some of the joys and some of the challenges for you entering into that space, versus what you've usually done? And then my last question with that is, what's next for you
Oh, that's a good
that
question.
you can talk about?
Yeah. So one of the joys was sort of being back in this space that prompted so much discovery for me, both like the YA space, as well as just sort of the period of high school. Um and the joy I found a real joy in I try, you don't want to pander to the reader. You can, sometimes that's a trap that you can fall into when you're writing YA is trying to be didactic or trying to be or underestimating the reader. And I really enjoyed sort of trying to write in a sophisticated manner. One of the challenges I think was not I there are times that you're just so aware of how much time has passed, and how different the world is. And so you want to enter every space with respect. And so I was trying to enter the space of being a teenager in this moment with respect, while also knowing that I can write to it. I can write to any experience, with research and with respect and curiosity and empathy. But I often sort of feared. I was like, am I is this world just so drastically different? And so I talked to a lot of young people, and not like, am I allowed to do this, but sort of like, what's important to you? What's going on in your life? And then, through those conversations, I found the bridge to what was important in my life. And that's how you do it. That's how you write outside of yourself, is I found is finding that empathy bridge and being like, great, the human in me sees the human in you. Now I know what I'm doing. I'm not using you as a sort of tool to tell some story that I need to get off my chest. So, yeah, that was a big challenge. But I loved writing this book, and I can't wait. I can't wait to write more YA. My next book is a book of comedic essays, sort of covering the 5 year period while I was writing this book. And it's sort of about this question of whether you can move home again, and what happens when you do go home again, and it's under duress. And so it's about the complicated relationship I have with Baltimore. It's about approaching middle age, very slowly. Um, and it's called Congratulations, the Best is Over. The cover of it is right there. It has an
I
upside
love that cover.
down on it. I've gotten so lucky with covers. Oh my goodness, I've gotten so lucky. Um, and so that's out August 8th. And then while that is cooking, I am working on a adult rom-com, that I'm excited about. I can't really say, I don't want to say much more, but it feels very of a pace. It almost featured, as one of the main characters, one of the side characters, one of the side adult characters from Kings of More. But
Mhm.
it just didn't work out, and I was like, you're gonna have to like, you're retrofitting. You're like, oh, actually, well, he was funny enough. He was on the grassy knoll, and you're like, you gotta stop it. So, but it's about love. It's about forming community. It is about queer people of color. It's about people who like to sit down at concerts, and which I am the number one member of that fan club. I'm like, I want to see you, but I don't want to stand. Thank you and God bless. Yes, thank you, Miss Jackson. I will. I'll be right here. You be up there, and we'll have a good old time. Amen.
I will be first in line to get a copy. I promise you, I cannot wait for it.
Thank you.
Guys, this is so wonderful. I do have an audience question, and I want to encourage anybody else who's still watching to put their questions into the YouTube chat, and we can put them forward to our Eric Thomas and Julian Winters. I do. The question is, are we going to get Linus and Harrison's college years? I think this one dovetails a little bit with the last question from you, Julian.
Yeah, that is a great question. That is something that I have been mulling. I've been mulling the following school year, and what it looks like to be friends at a distance, and sort of what like the central caper could be, and there's a couple different shapes that it could take. I've also been mulling like maybe we just go hang out with Aperna for a long time and see what the world is like for them. So I don't know. I think there's more in this universe, but I do need to do a little bit more. I need to do a little more digging. Or my therapist says I overthink things, so maybe I need to do a little less digging. Who knows? So, ready? Let's all write it together in the chat.
And I have a question here. Do you ever take stories from The Moth and put them into your writing? Do other people's stories make it in?
Stories that I've told, yes. Uh, yeah, there's one story that there's both actually there's two stories that you can hear on the Moth Radio Hour, and they're also on the Moth website that show up in my book Here for It. Um, I don't think I've fictionalized any of my stories. But yeah, anybody else's story, I don't take because it's their story. Um, and that's the thing that's so great about the Moth, and it's the same as reading or having conversations, is that it like you just like it turns you into this different world, and you're like, oh wow, people have such vivid experiences. I wonder what that's like. And so then that wondering, I think, is the thing that creates things for me. And that's always very exciting to me.
This is a question for me personally as a writer. Are there different hats for you, changing from writing for TV or writing for theater or doing a YA novel like this, or does it all feel kind of a single piece?
That's a really good question. And it's so funny. I'm sitting next to my hat closet and I almost went, I was like, I gotta go grab my hats. But I can't do more prop comedy. They're banging on the door. They're like, you are getting a citation. Um, they are different hats because so TV is truly, I love TV. I love TV writing, and it is the hardest writing because you don't get to do the thing for so long. It's idea generation, it's talking about the idea, it's pitching the idea, it's explaining the idea, it's outlining the idea, and then you're finally like, oh, finally I get set loose to write it, which is great for structure. TV is very rigidly structured, but it feels much more left brain than anything else. Novels, I find that I plot really stringently because I cannot get to the middle of a novel and be like, whoops. um, and then plays, I have a sort of more looser. I know what I want it to be about, and I know where we're starting, and I know where we're stopping, and I know sort of what happens. But I let the characters kind of talk me through it. Julian, do you find like even with different genres, do you find that there's different sort of ways that you're approaching it?
Yeah, I do feel like with different things that I do, whether it's a short story, whether it's a full novel, when I'm jumping genres and whatnot. I feel like, yeah, same with you, where it's like I really need to know the idea really well first and foremost, and then hop into it. But also, yeah, it's my approach is always different. With my full length novels, it is structure, 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 structure. When it comes to
Mhm.
like short story, I kind of like I just let myself live in the moment before I figure I write a lot of bad short stories before I actually get to the idea I'm supposed to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a lot of different things. It's funny we were talking about like the whole TV process because that felt like my novel process where it's
Oh
just like it takes me forever before I actually start writing the thing because I've gone through so many different things I need to prep before I get to actually do the thing. So that felt very close to home.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I like to fall in love with a novel idea and so it's like a weird romance. It's like a Jane Austen romance where you're like corresponding at a distance for a long time. Can you come? Can you show up, please, Mr. Darcy? Like, can you
Please.
get over here? So I'm like literally, I'm sitting in my office and I'm looking at four of those huge, sticky easel pads on the wall. They're all blank. They've
Mhm.
been blank for a long time. And I'm like, no, no, it's gonna go on there. And I'm like, yeah, it can't stay in here.
Oh,
You gotta map it out and then remap it, and it's gonna take a long time. And then when you finally get it, then you get to put a bunch of weird characters doing weird things.
yeah.
I hate it.
Well, I think that's actually a wonderful place to stop. I think that people will fall in love with this. But I mean, if all the weird things have coalesced and they are all in here, Kings
Yeah.
of the Moor, go get it. Eric Thomas, Julian Winters, thank you so much for this tonight. This is really fun.
Well, thank you for
Thank you.
doing this. Thank you, Julian, for being
Thank
a
you.
great conversation partner. Such a wonderful support. So, yay! Thanks for being here.
So
Thank you.
please go out.